So I was I went there for the show and just randomly got drawn. Which okay, here's the thing. I have never really fully believed in being able to manifest things mentally. But for at least a month before, once I got the tickets, for about a month, I daydreamed, pictured, whatever, thought about my set. I thought about getting pulled up. I thought about my set, and then I thought about talking about wrestling. I thought about Jeremiah Watkins, who I pictured in his feminist character, which was if for those that don't watch Kill Tony, back when they had that band, Jeremiah Watkins and Joel Jimenez would come out dressed as, like in pink wigs and purple wigs, and they would just be the ultimate, fuck men type feminists. And so we would, so I pictured that. I pictured him and I wrestling on stage and all this sort of stuff. And literally everything came to fruition exactly how I pictured it. Even they would do different characters every week for the show. And when the show first started and they introduced the band and they came out as the feminist, I remember thinking, holy shit, this is going to happen. And I remember even picturing getting a golden ticket, which was wild because then I got called up, and I remember walking around backstage and then coming out on the stage and then doing my 60-second set. And at the end of that, one of the things that I think really sealed it for me was that at least half the audience stood up and cheered at the end.
It was incredible.
It was fucking wild.
I watched the video. If you haven't seen it and you're on YouTube, make sure to check it out after this podcast. But it is incredible. I mean, I've been to the live shows before. I've seen it go well. I've seen it go poorly. A bunch of people who've been on. Dustin Deacle was the guy that I was talking about. Hans Kim has been on, and he's kind of made a career from Kill Tony.
He's killing it off of that. He's
unbelievable.
On the road in private jets, opening for Rogan.
He went from this podcast to opening Joe Rogan. I mean, it's insane. And did you you went back on, right?
Yeah, I've been on a few times because I did do Chop Suey. I went up. I did the second show for Chop Suey in Seattle, and then I flew down to LA and did the Comedy Store because it was one of those things it was, you're doing the 6-second set or whatever, but I had to, obviously have no idea where your comedy career is going to go, but I've been obsessed with the Comedy Store for decades. I've always loved that place. So just being there was cool enough. But
what was it like to be on stage there?
Oh my God, it was amazing. Yeah. The club itself is so cool. Miss Pat was the guest, so she's sitting right there, which is fun. You got the Tony and the whole band is there. And just the size of the main room, I didn't realize really how big it was until
it's huge.
Yeah.
I think how many does it see? 600?
600, yeah.
It's so big. I mean, that's a massive space.
Yeah.
For just a Ali
Makovsky was the person who took me to my seat, which was, again, it's weird because Ali I was a fan of from Kill Tony. She had been a regular before. She was the Hans Kim of the mid 2000s or the late 2000s or whatever. But she's working the door, and you'd always heard about, Kinnison worked the door there and all this sort of stuff. So you see these comedians now working the door. David Lucas was working the door too. And it was crazy being in that building, knowing the history of it.
It's so wild that you had this crazy good experience because Dustin came on and he had just such a rough one.
Really?
The guy that wanted to go up for the first time. Because we were at Chop Suey together, and he hadn't gone up yet.
Was that the show so you guys were there for the first one?
First one, yeah.
That was the one Levi was on, right?
Yep. Okay. So he went up, Levi went up, but I was sitting in the audience. My name was in the bucket. I had been doing stand-up about the same time as you had, and I didn't visualize. I mean, I knew what I was going to do, but it would just be recital,
Yeah.
And they would have lit me up. You did a really good job with your panel.
The panel went well. The first set of jokes went well because I hit the biggest ones that I had. I had the best jokes that I had that I'd worked on for a year. The second time when I had to go up, I remember my wife and I were writing jokes on the way up to Seattle, and I was at one point I almost just decided I was I'm just going to tell this story about this weird thing that happened when I was a kid. Just to keep it real. But then I was nah, that doesn't seem right. I think the thing that cinched it for the second time in Seattle, I made a joke about Amy Schumer. Mm-hmm. And so that, right away, Tony was in love with me at that point. But
it's doing a minute is such a weird thing.
So weird.
I don't know of any real other show that you do a minute of stand-up comedy and then just get eviscerated by a panel full of people.
And it's so funny how the show has like really evolved too, because if you look at the really old ones back in the Belly Room, it was a lot more of just, it was like it was almost like a college course in stand-up, because it was more just breaking down what your comedy. It was originally called Hinchcliffe Notes, and it was just going to be like notes on your jokes and your presentation, all that sort of stuff. And then it just evolved into roasting, which of course makes sense because that's going to get you a broader audience, and that's when they started being able to tour and stuff like that with the show. But
yeah, Dustin, he did his first set on Kill Tony at Skankfest.
Holy shit.
And he told the story on here, and I mean, I fucking love this dude. But the balls to even do that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, he's the most hardcore Legion of Skanks fan and all this shit. And like, he went, when I opened for Big J, I got him to come down and shit. But like, even now, like, if somebody said go do a minute in front of that audience, fuck, man.
It's so, I think it's weird because I remember the very first open mic I did, and you do 3 minutes, right? And a friend of mine who had been doing comedy for about 10 years at that point was like, that's the longest 3 minutes of your life, which is true. And then for a while, it's always like 3 minutes, 4 minutes. This is like the perfect time. But once you get to that point where you can do 20 minutes on stage, 25 minutes or whatever, and you have the freedom to kind of play around and like let the jokes breathe and stuff like that, then the idea of shortening it to like 4 minutes, 3 minutes or whatever, like, it's so difficult to go back to like the open mics at the comedy club because you only get 4 minutes. And then like now I know, if not before, I'm going to do another Kill Tony in October. So, to do 1 minute, I'm sitting there, I'm trying to think like, what do I have that I can do just
it's
1
such
minute?
a weird puzzle to solve.
Yeah.
I haven't done it. I'm not jealous of anybody that has to, because that's, I guess, like what you said, just do your best shit.
Yeah.
Like, but it's got to be short and poppy and like.
But I will say, I think that taught me a lot because, like I said, the first one, I had a few jokes. And then the second time that I went up, I was trying to come up with some stuff, and it made me realize it changed the way that I wrote things. Because then instead of trying to go for, long drawn out, not drawn out, but longer story, I realized I need to put a punchline everywhere, like every other line or whatever. So then that way I can break things apart. And okay, those will be my jokes that I tell on Kill Tony. They might be part of a 5-minute bit, but I can just pull out a couple of one-liners from that bit.
Comedy sucks, dude. it's so like, you start thinking you have something figured out, and then you start seeing it differently, and and I don't know. It's even you talking about like longer stories like that. It like gave me anxiety just hearing it. So I'm like, God, I have stuff like that I want to do.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I'm not there with it yet, and it's not. For me, like when a joke comes to me, then I can build off of it.
Right.
But like if I don't have that happen and I'm like, oh, I want to make this story into, I just every time I'm like, I just end up wanting to throw something against the wall. Like I can't get it.
100%. Right now I'm working on this thing about ghosts. And I realized like I was able to, like I had a couple of jokes that I thought were funny. They've worked well. And now I've been able to add other stuff like fear of dying, thoughts about dying, suicide, whatever. Like, and I can build like this. It's BMI. Pretty dark, but it's like, yeah. But it does. It builds from that because it started with just 2 jokes that I kind of had. On the other hand, I have a story that I'm like the drunk guy that you talked about. I told it once, totally just as a story that I would tell my friends, and it killed. And then now I've tried to like joke it up for stand-up, and I've never been able to do well with it. And I know that it's a good story, but like I gotta, like it's something
it's so annoying.
It's very annoying.
Like I've always said like writing jokes is like turning off all the lights in your kitchen and like trying to make a cake. Like you can't see anything and you just start grabbing ingredients.
Right, yeah.
And then the only time that you can actually taste it is like when the lights come on and somebody has a spoon in your mouth already. And like you don't, the joke's already out. Like you're tasting it already.
Yeah.
And then it's up to you to go back and like revise. But like you got these fucking terrible like you just don't know until you bring it in front of people.
That's it. That's the perfect. It's like people have talked a lot about how, you know, comedy and music, it's totally different, because music, you write everything out. If you're in a band, you get your song written, you rehearse it, you do like you get it perfect, studio quality before anybody hears it. And stand up, the only way you can do it is just go out there and start telling
There's
people.
no fucking garage to practice
It's not.
There are people that do it that way, and you can see it's creepy as shit.
Right.
It is not. It's not good.
And you can tell the difference too, because then they go up on stage in front of real people, and the jokes don't go the way that they think they will, because their buddies aren't laughing at it. You know,
It's weird.
yeah.